Before we start, folks, you might be wondering, why the heck am I wearing this t-shirt? Well, it's because I support Ara, I like her content, I love her Twitch streams, and I think you would too. If you're interested in checking her out, there will be links in the description below that will take you to her Twitter page and her Twitch page. She mainly streams chill out games, the occasional just chatting stream, and retro games, so definitely my kind of streamer. But wait, there's more! If you're interested in this t-shirt that I'm wearing, that's one of her t-shirts, there will also be a link in the description that will take you to her shop where you can buy such an item. So hopefully you check her out, and please leave her some support, she's great. And no, for the record, she does not know I've done this, she didn't pay me or tell me to do this, I'm doing this off my own back because I think she's a great content creator, she's a great streamer, I like her tweet, I like what she's about, and I think you would as well. Anyway, with that, let's get on with the video. Well, this is something I thought I would never do, making Halloween videos. As most of you know, the month of October is known for scary things, whether that be scary games, scary movies, or even scary books. This is the month of terror. The point is, horror is at the forefront this month, and today for me is the first episode of my Halloween special. To kick this Halloween special off, we're going to look into Resident Evil 1 and 2 games that were under development by Capcom but unfortunately never got to see the light of day. Some of the games looked really cool and interesting, while others were just bizarre and looked weird, so this is definitely going to be an interesting video. However, this is a big undertaking and I'm going to need some help, so I've called upon a guest to help me out in this massive video. I welcome back Rae Killham.
Hey, what's up? My name is Rae Killham and I'm once again joining Affro on a Resident Evil video. Since we covered the oh so awesome Resident Evil 2, it was only a matter of time before we teamed up yet again to make another Resident Evil video.
Well, Rae, it's a pleasure to have you on the show again. It's absolutely fantastic that you've returned for this. However, we've got a lot to cover, so let's get going.
Resident Evil 2 is a very popular game within the series that we all know and love. And as most of you know, its original model was scrapped and remade, with the original model being known as Resident Evil 1.5. If you're curious to learn more, go ahead and watch our Resident Evil 2 retrospective for more information. Shortly after the success of Resident Evil 2 immediately went into development. Shinji Mikami, who directed Resident Evil 1, took the role of producer. He wanted to end the series after 2, but having a rivalry with Hideaki Kamiya, he stepped down and asked for updates on Resident Evil 2's progress. By July 1996, a demo was released which showcased 1.5 as we know it today. 1.5 had a much different look than 2. RPD looked drastically different. Pre-rendered backgrounds were more detailed, and low polygons allowed more enemies on screen at a time. At 70% complete though, Resident Evil 2 was scrapped due to Yoshiki Akamoto's disappointment. In 2013, Resident Evil 1.5 was leaked to the internet, with modders working hard to restore it and finish it. For those of you who've dreamed of playing it, there's currently a mod known as the MZD, Magic Zombie Door, that translates the Japanese text to English and uses placeholder graphics from other games.
Well, Rae, thank you for that. Resident Evil 2 had a troubled yet interesting development history, and of course it resulted in the game being scrapped and being left with the final release, which is what this turned out to be. Now then, let's play the unfinished and scrapped Resident Evil 2. The first thing I'd like to quickly mention is while playing this prototype, apparently the ROM that was leaked was the 40% vanilla complete build version. However, the ROM featured here has the Magic Zombie door patch, which not only translates the Japanese text into English, it also adds more rooms and events not previously seen in the vanilla 40% build. This particular build is updated every so often, and at the time of this recording, a 2019 version of the MZD patch is out. Let's begin by saying this discovery for me was a dream come true. I love Resident Evil 2, I really do, but seeing what Resident Evil 2 could have been always fascinated me. I love seeing all the changes, the earlier versions of certain rooms, and what Capcom was possibly planning to have in store for us players. The first thing we must get out of the way, the characters. Leon is still here and functions pretty much like his Finnish counterpart. Although he looks a little different and has a huge knife on his leg, he also seems to be starting the game when he's kind of already been in the force, but he's still classed as a rookie. Elsa Walker, on the other hand, is a completely new character. Sporting a racing outfit and a motorcycle, she has to survive the nightmare using only her wits and, of course, her weapons. As we all know by now, Elsa Walker has no connection to Chris Redfield or other characters, so when they finally finished Elsa Walker, she was changed into Claire Redfield and had a stronger connection to the older Resident Evil characters by connecting her directly to Chris, who turned out to be her brother. Another big change is the police station itself. The RPD is a modern looking building which seems to have design influences of modern Japanese homes and flats of that time. You will also notice the lighting is completely different. A strong use of blues and greens throughout the area, giving a very cold and desolate vibe. I feel there's actually a lot more areas to explore compared to the final release. Capcom here was looking to either make the game much longer compared to the original game, or a lot more was to happen to make the player really get their thinking caps on. The environments look to be more interactive too. The shutters that can keep zombies out, or let them in, I assume, would have added a tactical element to the game. The weapons on offer are, well, they're massive. From my research, I can tell you the weapon selection would have included hand grenades, different machine guns, different pistols, pipes for melee attacks, and much more. Another possibility could have been that some of the weapons would have been exclusive to certain characters. So, for example, Elsa Walker could have had the grenade launcher, whereas Leon would have to make do with hand grenades. We'll never know for sure, but I think that would have been the case. Yes, Resident Evil 1.5 looked set to wow us and really take the gaming world by storm. As for actually playing the game, well, it feels like a Resident Evil game. Same tank controls, same general gameplay, and there's even auto-aim. All good here. I do like how the zombies here seem tougher to kill, and they can even grab you after death. Fortunately, they just fall off afterwards, so it's not a problem really. Some of the cutscenes do work here, and yes, even Birkin makes an appearance, although the way he looks is a little different. I also noticed that some of the background areas here are very low quality compared to the rest of the build, or are just in beta stages. You can actually see through a lot of the walls in this build, and the game is quite buggy. It crashed on me several times, or the camera tends to lose the character completely in some areas. Luckily for us, there is a solution, if the game doesn't crash, that is. By hitting the select button, you can choose any room to warp in within the area you are currently in. There's 5 areas in total. There's the RPD, the sewers, the factory, the laboratory or laboratory as some people will call it, and underground.
All employees proceed to the conference platform.
This to me is very cool. There is something that will happen that does not occur in the final release. The lab will catch fire. I thought that was pretty cool. Oh, and some enemies didn't make it into the final game. The gorillas here definitely gave me a run for my money. The man spiders are hard to hit and creep me out. I did notice there's no lickers though. This felt weird to me considering how memorable they are. Dogs, spiders, and of course the zombies are here as you'd expect. Also, here's another thing that did not make the final release. The character clothing and appearances start to degrade as they continually take damage. Of course, this aspect did make it into the final release of the remake of Resident Evil 2 that came out back in 2019. Armor was going to be a factor too, so that characters could take even more hits than normal. I still wish this particular feature was still in the finished release. But oh well, most characters can take a decent amount of hits before they die, so oh well. Also, even after you heal, the damaged clothing will still remain intact. As a result, you will have to check your health a lot more often as a result, since unfortunately the damaged clothing doesn't help you determine how hurt you are. The case was also similar in Resident Evil 1. I also found the files, but they don't work other than one which didn't match the title of what I clicked on, but most of them are buggy and you can't see anything but, I guess, code. This part wasn't finished yet. So, what about your supporting characters? Well, as Elsa, you will bump into Roy, a critically injured cop whose friend is John, who is locked in a prison cell. John is a prisoner who you will release, and he will assist you with more firepower. Notice how John looks like Robert Kendo in the final release of the game. Well, instead of scrapping John completely, they basically reused his character model and put him as Robert Kendo. Sherry is still in the game, and other than a different costume, seems to have a similar role, like in the final version. She does not seem to get infected, however, unlike the final release. Unfortunately for you, she will still run off, so yay, I guess. But what about Leon's cast? Well, Ada is still here, and yes, she's still a spy, although this time she's sporting an umbrella uniform, as opposed to her famous red dress in the final version. Marvin Branagh is also still here, although this time he's healthy and not turning into a zombie, until he gets injured later on, but for the most part he will assist Leon with more firepower. Ada still runs off as usual, so yay, I guess. Other characters include William Birkin, although his backstory here is unknown, and his wife Annette also makes an appearance as well. Although this time she seems to join Leon, and she can even survive in this version? Interesting. Look, The bottom line is this: Resident Evil 1.5 really has a lot to offer, even if it is unfinished and missing elements such as sound effects, the ability to decapitate zombies with a shotgun headshot, even though it works with a Magnum. The doors are not all working, the puzzles don't seem to be here at all, and of course the bugs and glitches. But you know something? The fact that we can even experience what could have been simply a dream and something that could have been forgotten for the rest of time has finally come true. Heck, this extends even to the music. It's really incredible in this build, and I love the unused songs in this version. I wish some of these had actually been allowed to have been transferred over to the final release. Now, yes, some of the songs that are in this version do indeed appear in the final version, but the ones that were not used in this particular build into the final release, I wish they were there, because these songs are really effective. Anyway, if you yourself can play this unfinished build, I really recommend it. It kicks ass. And there you go folks, Resident Evil 1.5. It was absolutely awe-inspiring to play this game. I mean, it's pretty clear to me that Capcom were taking this game, this sequel, to the next level, and you can see it in every aspect of its design. There's tons of areas, tons of weapons, a lot's going on, and there's just so much to see in the game. It really boggles the mind just how big this game was going to be. All of this combined possibly made Capcom think twice about making and releasing the game, but I still think they should have done it. Although the official statement that they made back then, which was that they felt the game was dull and boring, I feel is completely wrong. The game, in my opinion, isn't dull or boring at all. I think it's fun, engaging and really interesting. I just wish the game was more finished. Anyway, this is my opinion. If Capcom really thought the game was dull and boring, then I don't know. I just don't think it was. Well folks, let's move on swiftly, because we're going to look at another game that was in development but unfortunately was scrapped and unreleased. Thankfully, thanks to the internet, we finally got the chance to play the game. And the game in question is this, the original Resident Evil on the Game Boy Color.
In 1999, two brothers who worked as devs for Acclaim left to start their own company known as Hot Gem Limited. Following the success of Resident Evil, their first project was to bring its world to the Game Boy Color. Getting the green light from Capcom, the brothers were able to nearly complete the game at 90%. Every camera angle, cutscene, room, puzzle, and etc. were replicated to the best of its ability on a single Game Boy Color cartridge. There are two cartridges in existence, simply being called Cartridge 1 and Cartridge 2. Cartridge 1 is known as the 90% complete, with Cartridge 2 being known as older and more buggy. However, that was supposed to be a 1999 release, soon turned to an early 2000s release before Capcom pulled the plug. Capcom was not happy with the development of a Game Boy Color port, because it, well, just wasn't very good. As everyone knows, cartridges have very limited space, so they had to animate every movement and animation, which affected auto-aim and fighting enemies within the game.
The idea of Resident Evil coming to the Game Boy Color was absolutely ludicrous and a challenge to the game developers. I mean, how on earth do you make this game scary and faithful to the source material? You mustn't forget, Resident Evil 1 originally came out on the PlayStation 1, which was a 32-bit console, and the Game Boy Color is only 8-bit, and on a cartridge that's only, 2 megabytes at best big? So this had a lot to live up to. But as you can see from this little gameplay intro here, the game developers gave this a damn good try. And this is how it plays. Here is Resident Evil on the Game Boy Color. Wow, is what I first thought. The title screen looks neat, the voice can be understood properly, and a lot of the areas look like the ones in the PlayStation version. Well, scaled back of course, but not as much as you think. We are playing Cartridge A, which is much more complete compared to Cartridge B, which only features Chris, and many areas are locked. I also own Cartridge A for my Game Boy, so I can actually experience this on a real system. After picking Jill or Chris, the game starts with the infamous cutscene. It plays out almost the same as the PS1 version, and it is even subtitled. The lines are copied word for word in most cutscenes. This is really impressive. This is the kind of conversion that should be impossible, but no! The Game Boy Color is actually providing a PS1-like experience on a Game Boy Color. How cool is this? As you expect, your job is to solve puzzles, find your missing teammates, and get out of the mansion alive. You can't complete this game, but you can get close. The game will not advance past the lab elevator, which is a shame. Now, let's talk about the gameplay. Does the game use tank controls? Yes! As usual for old Resident Evil titles, the controls are the same. Only for the Game Boy Color they are even tougher due to the lack of auto-aim, pivoting and turning are more stiff, and I found myself stopping and sprinting in straight lines since running and turning was, in my opinion, too much hassle to do. Also, since the Game Boy Color has fewer buttons than a PlayStation controller, you aim using the B button and shoot using the A button. B also lets you run if you're walking. Sadly, this meant when I wanted to run, I ended up aiming instead. This happens quite a lot and takes a lot of time to get used to. The menu functions as expected, although some items come up as nothing, which reminds you this is unfinished. Also, all guns have unlimited ammo in this unfinished build, so there's no reason to pick up ammunition. The bazooka sadly can't be equipped, and no matter how hard I tried, it just didn't want to work. Trying to shoot zombies is tough, as it is hard to aim, and with the pistol, it can take up to 7 shots to make them sit down. The death animations for them also was not completed. But watch out, you can die, so watch your health. Most of the puzzles are here and do work, unlike Resident Evil 1.5. Another note here is the only enemies you can face are zombies. Literally, that's all you find. There's no dogs, no spiders, or hunters. Now the snake boss Yawn is here, but it only appears once and he doesn't move. Or maybe the game is on easy mode. Who knows? But what about the graphics? They're good and bad. On the good, the environments look very similar to the PS1 Resident Evil game, and the amount the developers could cram in is simply a technical marvel. The scaling sprites and their animation is pretty decent, and even the door opening screens are here. The cutscenes play out almost the same as the PS1 version, and of course the game has a creepy vibe despite the limitations. On the downside, the colours are kind of ugly and too bright for me. The Game Boy Color's limited color palette means odd colors are not uncommon either. It's also hard to read some of the information at times, and not everything is always easy to see. Also, Barry's sprite is just Chris's sprite, but with a beard. Yeah. Otherwise, what a game. I know it's not perfect, and of course this still needed more work and polish, but Capcom should have let this be a reality. The development team who were behind this really need a medal. They tried to pull off the impossible, and I think based on what is presented here, it could have been successful. I feel speechless to think that the Game Boy Color is capable of making this work. I love when companies are ambitious. It makes me appreciate what could have been. I'm just glad we can play this and get very far into the game. To me, this is very cool and we can't sneer at this. Bravo to the company in question, and maybe one day we can see this get completed via a ROM hack. Who knows? Well folks, I think we've done it. We have covered all of the cancelled Resident Evil 1 and 2 games, and I have to say it was a lot of fun to do, it was a great adventure, and it was interesting to see what was going on behind the scenes. Now Capcom, if you could release Resident Evil 1.5 to the masses, you know, the 80% build, then that would be absolutely phenomenal, and that would be a dream come true. Whoa, hold the phone! While recording this segment, I discovered a few more cancelled Resident Evil 1 and 2 ports, so let's give them a quick look. Resident Evil 2 was supposed to be coming to the Game Boy Advance in 2003 or so. Relight Studios were the company behind this idea. They built a prototype using their own engine in 2003. They did this to show off the immense power of the Game Boy Advance. Yes, the Resident Evil 2 voice is here.
Resident Evil 2. Incident occurred.
The intro is also here and fully voiced, albeit at low quality.
The terrible disaster had been caused by the T virus, a mutagenic toxin created by the international enterprise Umbrella Incorporated. For the Raccoon City Police Department's Special Stars Unit immediately began investigation in the case was apparently closed, thanks to the efforts of STARS members Chris Redfield and Jill Valentine. But the Umbrella Corporation's experiments were far from finished.
Then, check this out. This looks really good. The backgrounds are all here, it's fully 3D, and the background sounds even play. But Leon though, check out this walk. Damn, watch out world, because Leon is jacking his swag. I laughed so much when I saw his walk, simply wonderful. His run cycle is even better. Check it out, Leon needs the bathroom. I call this one the Leon Run. Anyway, it is much easier to navigate the zombie-infested world in this prototype, and the menu works. Well, sort of. You can't check anything and the ammo is unlimited. Killing zombies though is a massive chore. It's hard to aim, and it's anyone's guess if a zombie gets hit most of the time, since a lot of the time I miss my shots. And yes, there's no auto-aim. Collision detection was definitely not finished yet. Now, if you do get grabbed or shoot a zombie down, they literally fly to the floor. It's like Leon punched it so hard or the gun was a shotgun in disguise. Sadly, the game abruptly ends after the basketball area, and then this bizarre Street Fighter game plays for a moment.
It all depends on your skill. Go for broke.
Okay, I've also got to say as well that in this particular build you can run out of ammo, but unfortunately the counter doesn't show anything, and the bullets that you have, just pretend they're not there because they do nothing. Although thankfully, if you do walk through to the next playable area, you will be able to get your ammo back, so I guess it works. It's just a shame Capcom cancelled this version before giving it a real chance. They basically had enough of the Game Boy ports and just wanted nothing more to do with it. I wish Capcom had just really looked at the product and gone, actually, this could have worked. Oh well, it wasn't meant to be. And then there's the Game Boy Advance version of the original Resident Evil. Sadly, there's only a few screenshots of this, so enjoy what I dug up. It's clear that the game was possibly going to be not quite the same as the original Resident Evil, since the dormitory featured in these screenshots looks very different. Lastly, Resident Evil 2 was supposed to be coming to the mighty Sega Saturn in 1998 or 1999. Although development did start, Capcom eventually decided to cancel this port as they felt the Saturn wouldn't have given them the results they were hoping for. Sega promoted this game heavily, and this was a big blow for them to hear this. However, Sega's Dreamcast would get Resident Evil 2, 3 and Code Veronica in return, and fortunately, all of the games in question worked great on the Sega Dreamcast. That was all of the cancelled Resident Evil 1 and 2 games, and you have to say, some of those really should have been released. The Game Boy Color game looked incredible. Resident Evil 1.5 looked real good. The Game Boy Advance version of Resident Evil 2 I think would have worked really well. I can't say much for the Game Boy Advance version of the original game that Raylight Studios were trying to develop, and as for the unreleased Sega Saturn game, I mean, the original Resident Evil worked really well on Sega Saturn, so why couldn't 2? Yes, it would have been compromised and it wouldn't have looked as good, but it doesn't matter. I think it would have been fun regardless, and still a good port of the game. Also, I've noticed that a lot of the handheld games, especially this one, Resident Evil for the Game Boy Color, really pushed system hardware to the limits, and I wish these games were released to show you that these systems can do things that we as consumers never thought possible, and the fact that Resident Evil on the Game Boy Color was so close to the PlayStation original has to be commended. I mean, I thought that was not possible, but clearly I was wrong. I still feel sad though for Resident Evil 1.5. I think Capcom makes it look worse than it really is. I think the game's superb, and Capcom should give themselves a lot more credit. That game deserves to be released. I thought it was a fantastic experience and one that I'll never forget. That being said, had the game been released, the future sequels would have been affected, and who knows how far Resident Evil would have gone if the game hadn't changed into the final release version.
Although Resident Evil 1.5 and the Game Boy Color import were never officially released in retail, true Resident Evil fans like myself still feel the burn. As a kid growing up, I just remember seeing stills and screenshots on the internet of gameplay, and it just always made me sad knowing that I would never ever get to play these games. And although my parents never loved me enough to get me a Game Boy Color for Christmas, which, thanks by the way, I just know that I would have loved to have Resident Evil as part of my collection. However, with today's mods and modders, canceled games like 1.5 and the Game Boy Color import are available on the internet for fans like me to play. And that's honestly the most awesome thing I could hear. As for the Resident Evil 2 port, I actually just learned of its existence like not too long ago, and I'm still shocked.
Well folks, that's the end of the video. I really hope you've enjoyed this episode on cancelled Resident Evil 1 and 2 games, and I think it was a fantastic way to show you exactly what happens behind the scenes when games don't go to plan. I want to thank Rae for being here. She's been an absolute star, She's a fantastic guest, and I'm really happy she was able to contribute to this episode.
Thank you so much for another collab, Affro. It was really fun working with you, and I really hope to do more videos in the future.
If you're interested in seeing what Rae does on her own channel, I've provided links in the description below so that you can check out her channel. And she mainly does streams and let's play type content. She's played games such as Resident Evil 2 Remake, Tomb Raider, Mortal Kombat, Doom 2016 and more. So if you're interested in that, check her out. She's wonderful and a great content creator. Now then folks, I pass off the question to you. What do you think of the cancelled Resident Evil games that I covered today? Did you like them? Would you play 1.5? Do you think the ports would have been system sellers? And what other games do you think could have been cancelled in the franchise? Of course, we know about Resident Evil 0 on the N64, and we know about the cancelled concepts of the Resident Evil 4 games, but are there any other games that might have been cancelled that we don't know about? Well, let me know, and until next time, from myself and Rae, we will see you in our next videos.